Not since the Titanic sank in 1912 had a team managed to win a test series 4-1 after losing the opening test. That's what India have succeeded in doing. They have won by an innings in Dharamsala, England folding up for 195 on day 3 of the Dharamsala test. And now that win in Hyderabad, where they did something which is so rare for a visiting side, seems so long away. Welcome to ESPN Cricinfo Match Day. We're in the company of Sanjay Manjrekar and Steve Harmison to close the lid on what has been a long, engaging, absorbing series. It finishes 4-1 to India, but there's so much to dissect. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Before we look at the series on the whole, let's quickly go through day 3, which we hadn't got a 3-day finish so far in the series, but with the way England folded up on day 3, it ended up happening finally for the first time in this contest. Steve, I'll start with you. It can be tough to keep the spirits up once the series is lost, such a long tour to these parts of the world, and that was a quite deflated batting effort to end the series for England.
Yes, it was. It was. I don't think they can get away from the fact that it was a poor performance. I think we have to look at this test match in isolation. I think England have been relatively poor in this test match, taken away from what has been a decent performance or some good performances throughout the series. But I think today, it started with Ben Duckett, what he was trying to do, I'm not so sure. Ollie Pope played a 23-ball innings from an international number 3. I struggle to understand. And it continued from there. The only person that really looked comfortable at the crease was Joe Root. So it's natural. It's human nature and natural that you will get to a point when your series is finished and you're out of the series, you can't win it, and you've got one test match to play. And I think this was just one counter punch. I didn't think England had it in them to throw back. And unfortunately, when you've got the likes of Bumrah, Ashwin, Jadeja, Kuldeep, Siraj, that's a formidable bowling unit, and they just steamrolled it.
The other side of it, Sanjay, is that it can get easy to be complacent when you find yourselves in such a position. But we saw none of that from India, led by R. Ashwin in his 100th test, getting yet another fifer.
Yeah, I think complacency as a trait in Indian cricket, I think, disappeared a long time back post Dhoni, when Virat Kohli took charge of the Indian team, and when the going was also tough. The spirits have never been sort of down with that Indian team, and you see that especially when they're in the field. So that was not going to happen. Like Steve Harmison here, I felt that maybe England had one fight left, and had they again put in another, brilliant batting performance and given India even 7,500 runs to chase, that would have created a lasting impression. And overall, we would have looked back at the series a little differently. But as the series went on, the gap between the two teams became, wider and wider.
And that is where, Steve, England will feel that sense of regret, because we spoke in the build-up to this test that coming out of it as a 3-2 reads far better than losing 4-1. I can't help but once again bring up that parallel to India going to England in 2018, where they lost 4-1. It looked really bad on paper, but it perhaps wasn't that bad in terms of what actually transpired on the field.
Yeah, I think Ben Stokes will look at it and say, well, 3-2, 4-1, we still lost the series. And that's what the ultimate goal was. But I think it was the manner of them losing today, or the manner of lost this week, which will hurt that little bit more. I think he can put up with, and that's what I'm trying to say, is about taking this game in isolation. England have been in 4 test matches. England have given India not a scare, but I think things to think about, because of the way and the mentality England have come into this series, a little bit different to probably any England team that's been to India in the last 10, 15 years. But there's passages of play where I think just a little bit smarter, and England would have, the series could have been a lot different. But again, comes back to just relentless pressure. If you're constantly put under relentless pressure, you crack. And if you crack and make a mistake, then all of a sudden, England in this series have lost far too many times. Have lost clumps of wickets in a 75-minute period, and it's cost them the test match. And I think that's three or four times now that's happened. And that comes down to I think that comes down to skill sets. And the skill set of England under pressure probably was found wanting over the course of this last, 6.5 weeks.
Sanjay, let's speak about the significance of this series win for India. Can't be underlined enough that India played a series without Virat Kohli, without Rishabh Pant, without Mohammad Shami, without KL Rahul after the first test. They had 5 debutants through the course of the series. The last time that happened for India was 1996. To win by this margin, how significant a victory is this, even given the fact that we're so used to India winning at home?
Yes, and that was the big worry, wasn't it? Start of the series, we looked at the Indian batting lineup without an Ajinkya Rahane, without a Pujara, without a Virat Kohli, and we felt that might just even the series a little bit with India's very inexperienced new batting lineup versus the weakness that England had with their spin attack. But in the end, you got to say, yes, the batting rose to the occasion. Yashasvi Jaiswal was the only batter who carried his form right through the 5 test match series, which was a huge bonus for India. But I'll say this, the big takeaway for me, looking at Indian cricket, in the long-term point of view, is India's bowling. The arrival of Kuldeep Yadav, Akashdeep in that last test match. And now, when you look at the England batting failure, and Steve talked about relentless pressure, when you have 5 bowlers of the likes of, say, Bumrah, and Akashdeep in the last test, Siraj here, and then 3 spinners where Kuldeep Yadav has made such rapid strides. There's just no getaway for a team that has been struggling with consistent form. So in the end, what prevailed was a quality bowling attack, not just spin, versus a very experienced England batting. So that was really the battle that Indian cricket should be proud of. The advantage that the new inexperienced Indian batting lineup had was they were playing in home conditions, and the spin attack of England was, they punched above their weight, all 3 spinners, but it was always going to be manageable for these guys who had come through domestic cricket.
While we're on that, Sanjay, the fact that this series win, a comprehensive series win, comes without any rank turners. The only rank turner we saw this series was the one game India did lose. How much will that please India, and how much of a way forward could that be as far as pitches in India are concerned?
Well, actually, England made sure that India prepared better pitches in the sense that pitches that didn't turn as much because of what they did in Hyderabad. I think that was a fantastic win, and that is the big sort of takeaway for England in the way they beat India in that very first exposure on a typical turner. And after that, India was slightly wary. You saw the Indian spinners for the first time rattled in a home series in the way the England batters played, and 420 in the second innings by England on that pitch just made sure that India didn't, again, venture making another turner like that. And that actually made then things difficult for the spin attack of England, which is always going to give Indian batting runs. But the real contest was the big name players in that England batting versus the bowling attack of India. And this is where I felt, after my debut series, 89, when, I had to deal with people like Curtly Ambrose, Courtney Walsh, Malcolm Marshall, Ian Bishop. The England batters, if you're down on confidence, it was relentless quality attack, and with a lot of variation with Bumrah and the bowler that I mentioned earlier as well. Shami didn't play that series. So that's the, big sort of difference between the two teams.
Yeah, and that takes us to the big theme from this series, England's batting. And Steve, you look through the 4 tests that England lost, the common theme that runs out is costly collapses. Pretty much all the way through, Vizag first innings, going from 114 for 1 to 253 all out. And then perhaps the moment which all of us felt is where the series potentially turned. That first innings in Rajkot, where they were 224 for 2 with Ben Duckett on 150, but then folding up for 319. It hurt England a lot.
Yeah, it did, and it's massive. And Sanjay will know, much more than me from a batter's point of view. There are places you go around the world and you play, and there are dangerous periods, and it's the same period in the same place around the world. You come to England, first morning, you're going to get seam movement. You're going to get a little bit of swing because there's moisture in the air and everything that goes with that. Bounce in Australia. If you don't get used to the bounce when you first get there, it can really get on top of you. And when you go to India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, the subcontinent, if you don't start your runnings well, confident foot movements going back and forward, or you make a mistake, the likelihood is you get out. You don't put pressure on you. Not only do you put pressure on yourself, You put pressure on the next man coming in and the next man coming in after that. And that is something that will be talked about in every batting unit, in every dressing room around the world, going to certain parts of the world. They're in different types of scenarios and syndromes. And that, for me, is what makes this a little bit worse. There are question marks going into this series about England's opening batters. There's question marks about England's spin bowlers. I don't think there's a question on anybody's lips about England's middle order. Our experience, the way we, our character, our mindset in the likes of Pope, Root, Bairstow, Stokes. Put folks in there. He's an experienced enough player now, especially in this part of the world, to overcome what has been thrown at them. And I think that's the area, I think, really, let's let England down. England's decision-making. Got no problem with their mentality. Their mentality is why they've been in these test matches. The mentality is why. I know Ben Duckett said something that, is, whether it got took out of context a little bit or not, I think what he said, he wasn't too far off the mark in the way India have played and the way India's mentality has gone about this series. But I think England's mentality is why they've kept them in the series. But I also think it's just gone over the line at passages of play. And the thing that's annoyed me as a supporter is I don't like that this is the way we play. I'm sick of that now. Because what we get is good players, top characters, ruthless individuals. Don't settle for this is the way we play. What they do is they get on top, they cash in, and they say, right, you change your plan accordingly to me, the way I play, because I'm too good for you. Unfortunately, India were too good for England.
Usually, Sanjay, with visiting teams, the biggest concern is being jolted early in the innings. Openers find it hard to succeed in these parts of the world. But England didn't have that. In Crawley and Duckett, they had at least 5 stands of 50 plus, which is more than all visiting teams had managed in the last 5 years in tests in India. But yet after that, numbers 4, 5 and 6, all of whom now have 100 tests to their name, finish with really low returns. And that is something they really have to look at.
Imagine Crawley and Duckett batting at number 4, 5 and 6, in that sort of position in the batting order. The toughest place to bat in India with the spinner that India have is actually number 4, 5 and 6, because when you're starting off with the new ball, you have at least a challenge that you're familiar with. There's a bit of pace there, the ball swinging, something England can handle. But if you're down on confidence, and if you're coming in with 2 wickets down and spinners on top, the ball turning a lot, it didn't turn as much as it's done in the past, and fielders around. And if you don't have the skills to survive, no defense, and that the reality of the pitches, the turning pitches, is that the first 10, 15 minutes, it seems like it's a landmine. It seems like, how am I going to survive? So there has to be a degree of defense. If not, then England should have stuck to the template of the kind of sweep shots that we saw in that first test match. And they didn't actually go back to that kind of aggression. They adopted a different one, which was neither this nor that, and in the end just played it into the hands of India. So to answer your question, 1, 2, 3 are good positions to bat on, and I think that is the advantage Ollie Pope had in that first test match, and Crawley and Duckett right through the series. So if you want to beat India at their own game, you've got to have brilliant players of spin, mentally tough characters at number 4, 5 and 6.
Now, Steve, there's no debating the strength of mental character as far as those batters go. Root did end the series with a couple of knocks to his name. But when you look at Bairstow and you look particularly at Ben Stokes, does this become a big question for England? It's not just that the runs weren't there, less than 200 runs, but he felt all at sea for large parts of the entire series, barring that first game where he made a 70. A batter at number 6 contributing less than 200 runs and not bowling, that would be a problem for most teams.
It would be, but the captaincy, the qualities that he had, I thought he captained the team very, very well. I think he got 70 in the first innings, 70 in the first test match. He got 40 and 40 in the second and third. He got 2 balls in the fourth test, which I'm afraid, even if he was 10 yards down the wicket, he still got LBW and getting nowhere near it with the bat that rolled along the floor. That's just unfortunate. That's life. And in this one, you could see, again, there was Yep. A little technical issue, I think, against spin bowling with the ball coming back. As a few times now, Ben Stokes has been bowled from that. The Bairstows, I think there's England have got a question mark on what they do in the summer. Do Bairstow go back to 7 and keep wicket instead of Ben Foakes, which I think a lot of people say will happen. Not should happen, but will happen. The one thing I'll say about Johnny Bairstow, he batted 50 balls once in this whole series. And that, for me, when you go to India, you've got to get over the initial, especially at number 5. You 9 times out of 10 you're coming under pressure. 9 times out of 10 you're coming in with men round the bat. 9 times out of 10 you're coming in with people with a bowler spinning the ball or reverse swinging the ball. So your first 20 balls are the hardest you have to get through. Then it should in theory, become easier. Sanjay will know that more than me. But then after that, then you can cash in with your aggressive manner and aggressive mentality. Unfortunately, it felt as though Johnny was facing his 30th to 60th ball when he was facing his 1 to 30th, and that really he was in 5th gear before he was in 2nd gear, and that couple of times cost him his wicket. Then the added pressure of playing for place, and then obviously the emotion of a 100th Test match. I think that sums up Johnny Bairstow's series.
All told, Sanjay, what should England learn from this series for whenever it is that they next have to face these conditions and play in the subcontinent?
Good question. And see, in commentary, we were talking about coming to India. I talked about having a good defense, but is that an unrealistic expectation with the kind of cricketing culture that we have, where the game is getting shorter and shorter? We have T20s, T10s, 100s, where youngsters are, trying to find various ways to hit sixes. They're working on their power. They're spending a lot of time in the gym. And look at Shubman Gill, Yashasvi Jaiswal. When they hit sixes, they generally go into the 2nd tier of the stats. So that is where the main focus is. So yes, it's all right for us to say that you've got to have good defense. But in this current cricketing landscape, I don't think too many young batters that will come through to the Test level will have defense as their main strength. It might be one of their strengths, but they'll have other strengths which will be better than defense. And the old adage of, it's always something that is said that you play to your strength. And if your strength is not defense, then obviously you're going to take the attacking mode. And that's where the risk lies. So, attacking and being consistent is a very difficult thing to do against quality bowling.
All right, let's focus on the gains and let's talk about India, Sanjay. And there are quite a few headlines coming out of this story. Yashasvi Jaiswal bossing it the way he did. Shubman Gill overcoming a tough start to seemingly find his way at number 3. You've got Dhruv Jurel coming in as wicketkeeper and Kuldeep Yadav's revival as a Test match player. Which of these gains stands out the most for you?
I'm going to look at this a little skeptically. Which I'm sure a lot of people won't enjoy. Hats off to all these young batters for, putting in the performances. Gill getting a 200s, Yashasvi Jaiswal. I mean, crazy performance, over 700 runs. So brilliant. But for me, it is still about these batters having shown the potential to get big runs at the Test level, very keen to play at the Test level, which is a great sign for us as well. Dhruv Jurel has some, great foundation. So that's an exciting talent out there. But let's wait a little longer. Let these guys play in Australia, England, and other places, and then we'll see, who are the long-term batters that India will rely on, who will take the baton from the likes of, say, Virat Kohli, Rohit Sharma, Pujara from over the years. So that is what we'll have to wait and see. So I surmise the Indian batting performance as young batters showing great potential. I think the greater benefits is just watching this 5-man bowling attack of India on pretty good pitches and what they did with the England batting lineup.
Could you then potentially make a case for Kuldeep Yadav possibly being player of the series ahead of Yashasvi Jaiswal? Jaiswal finishes with 712 runs and the nod from the adjudicators. But Kuldeep Yadav, not just for his 19 wickets and the impact of those wickets, but also the amount of time he spent batting at the crease.
Well, one of the adjudicators was me, and I voted for Yashasvi Jaiswal purely because he was the difference actually between the two sides. not one batter was able to carry his form from the first test match till the last. Yashasvi Jaiswal was the only batter. I mean, Rohit Sharma's slightly lack of form hurt India in the first test and a couple of test matches. Shubman Gill as well was on the verge of being, dropped. They were looking at other options. So those were the things that, got England in the game. Yashasvi Jaiswal was the one constant factor. So, yeah, clearly the player of the series for me for being relentless with the hunger and getting the big scores, the big 100. That tells you something about a young player. So, yes, Yashasvi Jaiswal before me, and then you could say Kuldeep Yadav, and then Bumrah spares, that he bowled in Vizag, all the other things.
Yeah, fair enough. Jaiswal does have at least 150 plus score in every game of the series, including those two double hundreds in the second and third test. To think that he was playing his first series at home. So well done, Yashasvi Jaiswal. England had a fair bunch of newcomers of their own, and Steve, they do stand out as the obvious biggest gains. You generally be happy as an English visiting side to come to a tour of the subcontinent and unearth one spinner, but England have Shoaib Bashir and Tom Hartley and Rehan Ahmed, who shouldn't be forgotten, to be immensely proud of.
Yeah, I'm so pleased the way they've performed. I think when we sat at the start of the series, there was one glaring anomaly between the two sides, and that was the spin bowling department.
Yeah,
our seamers, you could say Anderson and Bumrah would have a part to play. Our batting units, less Kohli and obviously Keir Rowell, you'll say, yeah, they were because you didn't know how good Jaiswal was going to be. But it was like, I mean, comparing England's spin bowlers with the Indian spin bowlers, like comparing apples and oranges. It's just completely different. But I think they've performed unbelievably well. To think Shoaib Bashir has gone past. He got more test wickets than he did first-class wickets when he came into this series. That tells you everything about where England's spin bowling department was at. And I say this with a great smile on my face because I've seen a young man really enjoy being out there. The wicket yesterday he got, can't remember which one it was, bowled top of off stump. I mean, they're gone. England have gone out the game. And he bounced down. He's looked to like two of his teammates, probably Stokes and Root, who played 100 test matches. Yeah. And he's going, what a ball, what a ball. It was like, what a ball I've just bowled, what a ball I've just bowled. So while you've got enthusiasm like that and you've got somebody that wants to learn, I think they're big ticks in the boxes, England moving forward. So you can't be critical of anything from a spin bowling department that England went out there with because they had one test between three spinners and they had to play a majority of them. So they'll learn from it, they'll get better from it, they'll get experience. Where they go from here, and there's a lot of talk in this country about where they get their next cricket because both Hartley and Bashir play at counties with Jack Leach and Nathan Lyon for the first part of the series. But where they go from here, for me, is in their hands. If they go out and push themselves forward and perform, they'll get cricket wherever they get their cricket. They need to sort of keep this momentum of the trajectory of their career. But I think for 5 test matches, they've got to be proud with the way they've conducted themselves and performed.
But the challenge of building on these gains, Hami, something you allude to already, it's not necessarily the easiest place. You don't see spin feature a lot in county cricket. So how do England build on the gains of the likes of Hartley and Bashir, given what county cricket is like?
It is difficult. I mean, both Hartley and Bashir are going to come back to bowl and spin in April and May, and you can't feel your fingers, never mind. You do well to take your fingers out of pockets, to be fair, to try to keep them warm in April and May. But joking aside, the beauty about that is they've got to then learn to bowl spin on pitches which aren't spin friendly, because they are going to go places around the world where they're going to have to play for England as a spin bowler and it ain't going to spin. So then they have to learn their lines and their lengths and their different speeds and everything that goes with bowl and spin. We're talking about 2 or 3 young spin bowlers that England took who were the infancy of their first-class careers, not just their test careers. So this little passage of play that they've got coming up ahead, 7 first-class matches in a short space of time, I think will develop them different skill sets than what they've had playing against Jaiswal, Rohit Sharma, Shubman Gill on a turn and pitch. They'll possibly have to change the way they bowl, different angle, different speeds, like I said, different length. So it's a good learning experience, but first and foremost, I think they've ticked a lot of good boxes to look at England's spin bowling department going forward and think, they've got something to work with. Tom Hartley potentially goes back to Lancashire and breaks down the door of the captain, Keaton Jennings, and the coach, Dale Benkenstein, and says, right, I want to bat number 7, and I'm going to be your second spinner, but all-rounder. And that's one way of getting into the team at the start of the season.
Yeah, it will be interesting to keep an eye out on those spinners. But for the time being, we have to applaud Shoaib Bashir and Tom Hartley and Rehan Ahmed for the effort they put in throughout this test series in India. I remembered while you guys were talking that when the series began, it's been long enough that Jack Leach was part of this series. That's one of the things about a 5-test series. It goes on a while. It's been 45 days. So let's do something fun. Let's do a fun exercise to recap this 5-match series. I'm going to do a bit of a rapid fire. We are also pivoting towards T20 season. So we're going to increase the speed on this one. I'm going to ask you for your picks.
Yeah,
Sanjay,
what's in the hamper? Yes.
that will be revealed to you off air, Sanjay.
Yeah, Steve. So we have a very popular show where there's a rapid fire. At the end of it, they get a nice little hamper. I think there's a mobile phone and everything in it. Yeah, so that's why I thought there'll be a hamper.
The hamper will await whichever of you reaches our offices first. Whenever it is in the future, will find a hamper for themselves. But let's first get the game out of the way. I'm going to ask both of you one by one to make your picks. Let's start you easy on this. The best batter of the series.
Jaiswal. No question.
Yeah, Jaiswal. In his own sort of league, he was.
All right, to a tougher pick now. Best bowler, Steve?
Kuldeep Yadav. I think he took a lot of big wickets.
Yeah, didn't play, as much as he should have, or hasn't bowled as much as he should have. But I'm with Steve on good pitches against the odds. Made a great impact.
Okay, I'll allow the batter the first strike on this one. So Sanjay, your pick for the best knock of this series.
Yeah, this is where I have to go with England, because what Ollie Pope did in that first test, it's something that I've never seen in India, and that has to be remembered, whatever the end result. I mean, 196 on that pitch, and the kind of shot that he played, very much a modern, innings. So that will remain the best batting performance for me.
Steve, couple of double from Jaiswal there.
I would say Jaiswal's second test match in Vizag, that one. And one notable tick in the box. It's not very many runs, but I think a huge impact in the series and in his career. 52 not out Shubman Gill in the 4th test match to get India over the line. I thought that was a brilliant knock in the context of his career and his numbers and what happened in the series.
Okay, Steve, you picked first this time. The best spell in the series. There's Hartley all the way back in Hyderabad with the 7 for Bumrah, 6 for Kuldeep, got the 5 for in Dharamsala, a couple of 5-fers for Ashwin, couple for Bashir. Where are you going?
Well, it's always a batter's game, so I'm going to pick a bowler. I'm going to go with a seam bowler because of how difficult it is. He doesn't find it difficult in India, but for me, 6 for 45 in the first innings at Vizag. There was an hour of passage of play when Jimmy Anderson bowled at the end of the day and Bumrah bowled straight up afterwards. That, for me, is arguably the best test cricket I have seen in a hell of a long time. Anderson was unbelievable, and Bumrah rocked up and went, well, I'm going to show you how good I am as well. I missed the 700 test wickets. I think Bumrah's spell in Vizag first innings was the spell of the series.
Sanjay?
He's made such a great case for that performance, so it's very difficult for me to go elsewhere. Kuldeep Yadav's, 5 wickets first day at Dharamshala on a good pitch that we were all saying, batting beauty, best pitch of the series, was a remarkable performance. But Bumrah, at Vizag, one of the typical Indian pitches where there was nothing in it for him, and of course the magic ball that was part of the 6 wickets. So yes, I'm with Steve on this one.
All right, best catch of the series. Ben Foakes could have his own nomination set here, but there's also Ben Stokes' running catch to dismiss Shreyas Iyer in the second test, and then we had that one from Shubman Gill to get rid of Ben Duckett in Dharamsala.
Stokes for me.
Same here. I mean,
Sunday.
Both similar catches running back. Ben Stokes was to run back much higher and everything. Yeah, 2 brilliant catches, but yeah, Ben Stokes for me as well.
All right, finally, you can go subjective with this one. Your favorite moment of the series?
Favorite moment? Wow, that's so difficult when you. I think there's been loads of great moments.
You want to take your time, Steve?
Yeah, go on. If you've got one,
come right, where don't ask about logic behind it, but something which got me really excited in commentary was Ben Stokes arriving on the scene, final test match, decides to have a bowl, gets Rohit Sharma clean bowl with a Jaffa. So that for me, and forget everything else, just a moment that it's hard to forget.
Yeah, that there was an incident, a ball walking off the field. I can't remember who it was. I think R. Ashwin was giving the ball back to, I think, Kuldeep Yadav after. I think Kuldeep Yadav had got two very, very similar. So I'm going to go with a similar concept, but from a moment point of view, where Kuldeep Yadav had got 5 wickets, and R. Ashwin had got 500 wickets, and Kuldeep's trying to give the ball to Ashwin, and Ashwin giving it back. So Kuldeep's got a souvenir of a 5-wicket ball that Ashwin's taking 500 test wickets with. And the same happened today where Shoaib Bashir's trying to give the ball back to Jimmy Anderson, who's took 700 wickets. And Shoaib Bashir's now got his second test 5-for, and he's now got a ball which has got 700 test match wickets. Them 2 balls of souvenirs are going to be priceless going forward. But 2 very, very good moments of the young and the old. And what this great game we love, we appreciate, because there are people at the end of their careers. And I think this series, has unearthed some absolute superstars at the start of their career, but also some senior players who are going 700 test wickets, 500 test wickets. Rohit Sharma's innings with Jaiswal. I think we've had some very, very good moments between the young and the old, and I think that is what really taken away from the series will be for me, gives me heartwarming that test match cricket's still alive.
Lovely. I think straight away the hamper should go to Steve Harmison, and he deserves 2 for it, because that was just brilliant how he encapsulated the whole series and picked out the emotional moments. I think favorite moments shouldn't be clinical. It should be about something that makes your heart warm.
Exactly, and perfectly said, Sanjay, that it should be 2 hampers, because he's also done the job I was thinking of doing on how to wrap the proceedings for this series, because there is no perfect summary, no more apt summary than that, really, because a series where you've seen stalwarts of the game reach milestones, 700 test wickets for Anderson, 500 for Ashwin, a bunch of cricketers celebrating their 100 test cap, and yet you saw so many youngsters playing for the first time. You think of all the ones in the Indian middle order, you think of all the English spinners, all of that combined to give us what was a series which was a lot more engaging than just that 4-1 scoreline will tell people when they look at it in the future. On that note, we close the lid on this 5-test series. Sanjay Manjrekar, Steve Harmison, it's been a pleasure having
Steve.
your
company. Thank you, Sanjay.
Steve, that smile on Sanjay's face should tell you how much it meant to have you on board, because for most of the series, he's had to deal with me alone.
It's been an absolute pleasure, boys.
Yeah.
Thank you. We will look forward to your company the next time on ESPN Cricinfo. Thank you so much to both of you, gentlemen. That does it from us on ESPN Cricinfo Match Day. We will be pivoting quite soon into T20 mode. We have an IPL season upon us. T20 timeout is coming up with a rebrand. Watch this space to find out what you're in store for come this IPL season. But before that, be sure to download the ESPN Cricinfo mobile app if you haven't already, to get yourself covered with everything to do with the world of cricket. That's it from us. Thank you so much for watching.